If you were a reporter on the scandal beat during the George W. Bush administration, you were a busy reporter. There was the vice president's secret energy task force. Yes, we're writing the nation's energy policy. No, you are not allowed to know who is writing it, but take a guess. There were the no-bid multi-billion-dollar contracts. What could possibly go wrong? There was the Valerie Plame affair. The vice president's chief of staff convicted after a covert CIA officer was outed in political retaliation for her ambassador husband blowing the whistle on one of the Iraq war lies, uranium from Africa. Scooter Libby convicted in that case, but spared his time in prison when President Bush commuted his sentence. There was the Abu Ghraib scandal in Iraq. There was illegally wiretapping Americans without warrants. Who can forget the purge of U.S. attorneys to make room for prosecutors more in keeping with the political priorities of the administration? Perhaps the most fun scandal of the Bush administration was the snorting crystal meth off the toaster ovens scandal. Employees at the Minerals Management Service accused of systemic corruption of kind of exciting nature. Gifts from industry officials, sex with oil and gas company executives, and of course, snorting crystal meth off the toaster ovens. Paying pundits to toe the administration's line without saying that they were on the payroll, selectively editing scientific reports to exaggerate the uncertainty around climate change. Karl Rove giving the one-finger salute to the Hatch Act, which says career government officials can't be used for partisan political purposes. The Republican Party political briefings for civil servants were just too hard to give up, so they kept them. There was the still sort of ongoing mystery of how the hooker ended up with the press pass. Remember that? Conservative blogger and moderately expensive male prostitute Jeff Gannon, or J.D. Guckert, depending on how well you knew him. Did we ever find out how he got into the White House press briefings and got called on for all those presidential questions? Of course, there was Hurricane Katrina, almost 2,000 people killed, $100 billion worth of damage. The man President Bush appointed to head up the government's horrible handling of that disaster and others had no experience in the field. He was the former commissioner of the International Arabian Horse Association. The Bush administration had a lot of scandals. That was just a partial list. We won't even talk about the presidential advisor who ran the shoplifting scam at Target, or the guy who President Bush put in charge of not giving any AIDS funding to anything having to do with sex workers, and then he himself ended up on the phone list in the D.C. Madam case. We won't even talk about those things. I could go on. The Bush era was a very rich load of scandals, large and small. And now, in the post-Bush era, the right has really, really wanted there to be lots of Obama administration scandals, too. Today's heroic effort to finally try to get traction on Benghazi notwithstanding, nothing much has stuck. Solyndra, Fast and Furious, Acorn, the new Black Panthers. Outside the Foxiverse, everything has pretty much been a belly flop for them so far. But you know what? Now there is one. Seriously. It started out with a Tea Party group complaining in March of last year that they were being treated unfairly by the government. They said they were being unfairly targeted by the IRS. Tea Party groups applied for tax-exempt status, and some of them got back letters from the IRS, like this one addressed to the Waco, Texas Tea Party. Dear Sir or Madam, we need more information before we can complete our consideration of your application for exemption. The IRS wanted things like copies of current web pages, blog posts, newsletters, bulletins, flyers, newsletters, any and all literature, copies of agendas and minutes from board meetings, an updated copy of board members and officers. In late March, the Republican chair of a House Oversight Subcommittee asked the IRS commissioner about this seemingly extra attention that was being paid by the IRS specifically to these Tea Party groups.
I've gotten a number of letters just recently. We've seen some recent press allegations that the IRS is targeting certain Tea Party groups across the country, requesting what have been described as onerous document request, delaying approval for tax-exempt status and that kind of thing. Can you elaborate on what's going on with that? I mean, can you give us assurances that the IRS is not targeting particular groups based on political leanings?
Let me start by saying yes. I can give you assurances. As you know, we pride ourselves on being a non-political, nonpartisan organization. What's been happening has been the normal back and forth that happens with the IRS. There's absolutely no targeting. This is the kind of back and forth that happens when people apply for 501c4.
It's the IRS commissioner who was in the George W. Bush administration, also in the Obama administration. He may have believed that to be true when he said it, but that is not true. Earlier today, at an otherwise innocuous conference sponsored by the American Bar Association, an IRS official admitted that actually, yes, Tea Party groups were singled out, by at least one low-level IRS employee at the IRS office in Cincinnati. Groups with names that included the words Tea Party and/or Patriot were singled out for extra scrutiny in their applications for tax-exempt status. According to the IRS, at least 75 Tea Party groups were given this unwanted special attention, although none of them was actually denied the tax-exempt status that they were looking for. You cannot single out groups for special scrutiny based on where you think they are in the ideological number line. You cannot do that to groups on the right. You cannot do that to groups on the left, or vice versa. You cannot pick one side if you're not picking the other. That's nuts. And the IRS apparently now agrees. The agency has, as of today, issued an apology. They say they fixed the problem last year. They say there is an upcoming IRS Inspector General audit that will look into the matter further. I mean, it's not like outing a covert CIA operative or something. It's not heck of a job brownie, but it is legitimately a really bad move by the administration, and they better fix it.